afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Media Research Hybrid Futures 2022 Predictions webinar. My name is Sianta Dessa. I'm the Communications Coordinator here at Media Research. So today we have a special webinar for you with our in-house expert analysts to present the market-shifting, meta and cultural trends predictions for 2022. We will cover a wide range of big trends in digital media and tech across music, video, brands, marketing, games, sports, touching on topics like NFTs, the creator economy, and the metaverse and beyond. So today with us, we have Mark Mulligan, our Managing Director and Music Analyst. We have Tim Mulligan, our Research Director and Video Analyst. We have Karol Severin, our Senior Games Analyst. We have Hannah Calahot, our Cultural Trends Analyst. We have Tatiana Sirisano, our Music Industry Analyst and Consultant. We have Chris Takrar, our Creator Trends Analyst and Consultant, as well as Trishti Das, our Sports Analyst and Music Consultant. So the webinar is being live streamed across Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So make sure to use the comment section to ask all of your questions, and we will be answering them in the Q&A section as well. So firstly, I'd like to introduce Mark Mulligan to come up so that we can start.
Great. Thank you, Sion, and hello and welcome, everyone. So what we're going to be going through over the course of the next sort of 40 plus minutes is our predictions for the coming year and the years beyond. For those of you familiar with Media's predictions, we basically, what we do is that the analysts lock ourselves in sort of virtual rooms and sort of hash out what we think are going to be the big trends shaping not just the coming 12 months, but also the what will have longer term impact into the years and perhaps even decades beyond. We always take this very joined up approach, looking across all forms of entertainment and looking how everything sort of interconnects. So I'm going to start off talking through some of the meta trends. I'm also going to walk through some of the music trends and hand over to some of my colleagues to walk through sort of some of the others. So this is what we're going to look at throughout the presentation. So on this next slide here, we can see, first of all, the meta trends. Number one, the headline which we're taking really across all of our the theme that unifies everything is it being the year of the creator. Now, clearly, we've had, the creator has been a really big part of what has been happening in the wider entertainment space for the last couple of years. And last year was a huge amount of investment, particularly from venture capital firms, into creator companies, but also a bunch of money from private equity firms into some more established creator tools companies. So this is not like it's come out of nowhere, but we really think this is going to be a tipping point that's going to have implications right across digital entertainment. So that's it on, if you like, part of the supply side of the equation. On the demand side of the equation, regular followers of Media will know we talk a lot about the attention economy, how it had reached saturation prior to the pandemic, how the pandemic opened up a whole bunch of new time. We've started to see, as people return back to some degree of normality, Omicron notwithstanding, that a lot of that time just disappeared. Nearly half of the newfound entertainment time that happened during lockdown 1 had disappeared by June of 2021. So entertainment's becoming more of a zero-sum game. You're competing against everyone and everything. So really, it's not just giving people ways to engage with your content, it's you're going to have to give them reasons. So you're going to have to compete harder than ever to get people and maintain people's attention. A couple of the big things from a technology perspective, so we've done supply from the creators, we've done demand in terms of the audience, and next the distribution, the technology. Metaverse is obviously really becoming coming of age. Our big, we say 2022 is going to be the year of the creator. Well, we said that 2021 was going to be the year of the immersive web. Our catch-all phrase for things, including the metaverse. And Facebook nicely, conveniently went and renamed themselves Meta towards the end of the year, helping to consolidate our prediction. It's not like 2022 is suddenly going to be the year where the metaverse goes mainstream, but a lot of the really important building blocks and the ecosystem of the marketplace are going to be established. NFTs, still clearly very early stage. They sound bigger than they are because of the echo chamber of the early adopters. There will almost certainly be a failure to meet expectations of some degree during perhaps the second half of this year. That does not mean that NFTs or indeed digital collectibles as a whole do not have a long-term viability. It simply means that the realities are going to clash with inflated expectations in 2022, but absolutely a lot of growth ahead. Okay, so moving into the music trends. First of all, the slicing of the funnel, and a lot of our trends are focused on how we think there's going to be a tipping point driven by the creative economy and changing the music business. Number one, the slicing of the funnel. The music business typically operates on bringing a load of people in at the top and working their way through to the end of the funnel to those who go and release. The thing is, with streaming being the end point for essentially the music business, all roads lead to streaming. For mid-tail and long-tail artists, streaming is simply not good for remuneration. The push for remuneration is going to characterize some of the fault lines in the music business over the coming years. Things like the broken record movement, the UK parliamentary inquiry into the economics of streaming, all of these point to the issues of remuneration. But really, the solutions for remuneration lie less in altering the economics of streaming itself, and instead searching for places where artists can monetize smaller audiences more effectively and get better remuneration. That will be the slicing of the funnel. You take that, couple it with the emergence of Web3 and various different technologies, more fan-to-fan as well as artist-to-fan solutions, we're going to see the emergence of a parallel music business, one that is playing by different rules, where streaming is no longer the centerpiece, where artists are no longer necessarily feeling that they have to be churning out content every couple of weeks or every month, where there's going to be a different attitude to what it means to be an artist, to what it means to be a creator. And that leads into many of those things will not be about monetizing rights. They might be selling beats onto BeatStars. It might be writing top lines on Sound Better. It might be doing paid Q&As within a fan app. All of these things which are less about traditional music IP and instead other ways of creators to go and monetize their creativity. So the last set of music trends, which I'll go through before handing over to my colleague, so the first of these on the next slide is perhaps a bit less interesting in some ways, but the rise of fintech in music. So fintech is, clearly being something which has got a lot of initial momentum with Square or Block's acquisition of Tidal, but there's a huge amount of solutions out there doing debt financing, cash flow management, etc. for artists, and that will certainly be perhaps one of the things to deliver best near to midterm results in terms of investment into the space. The post-DSP streaming boom, the likes of Peloton and Twitch and Instagram, TikTok, all of these are driving serious, meaningful revenue for the music market. We think that all of those together will likely exceed 10% of all streaming revenues by 2022. And then finally, we can't ignore the continued boom of the catalog M&A space. There's absolutely going to be continued growth in this sector. There's so much new money flowing into the space, new vehicles, new funds, etc. And so that is going to be, essentially this sort of financialization of the music business. You've got money coming in, getting into the rights, and then you've got money coming into the creator side, and you've got money coming into the fintech side. So if I were to draw all of this together, influx of capital into various parts of the music business are going to underpin many of these changes. Okay, I realize I covered a lot of ground there, but with that, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Hannah, who's going to walk you through some of the cultural trends. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark, and hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining. So, I'm just going to take you through some of the major cultural trends we're going to be seeing over the next year and potentially beyond. So on the first one, let's start with lean out is in. Now, what exactly does that mean? Basically, consumption dynamics are evolving. There's three primary dynamics here. There's lean back, so the interaction is one way. Consumers are either paying attention or they're not. It's a zero-sum game with only one method of engagement. This is the traditional broadcast TV expectation and largely also how advertising operates. We're now seeing more of a movement towards lean in. So consumption along with an immediate behavior that can happen at the same time without competing, that exhibits a higher degree of fandom than passive consumption. So for example, the liking of content on socials, buying merch, live betting on platform, looking up stats or information. So Amazon Prime Video has actor info on its app screen if you're casting a show, which is a really good example of capturing this behavior on platform. The analog era had this with time delay. So for example, the water cooler moment, merch purchases at a gig. But with digital, we're already seeing some lean out or creative behaviors. So for example, interacting with friends could mean making memes, live streaming a game while playing on Twitch, which is an external platform, and buying merch could mean fan-made merch or a digital skin in a game rather than direct revenue to artist purchase. So this really lends into the new dynamic of lean out. This is fandom-driven behaviors that happen entirely outside of or even in place of consumption. And these are increasingly creative. So for example, making fan covers or remixes, which is not limited to music. Take the TikTok Bridgerton musical or YouTube parodies or reviews like CinemaSins. These aren't new, but the barrier to access, this is the critical factor here, for this is lowering with technology innovation, which is blurring the lines between consumers and creators, something that Mark has highlighted and my colleague Chris will also be talking a little bit more about later. When embraced by brands, this can be hugely successful. So The Witcher, for example, is a cross-genre franchise that has gone from books to games to TV shows, and Netflix is now branching into Stranger Things games in certain markets, but that seems to be a direction they're going in. More niche, you have like the Szechuan sauce from Rick and Morty making a comeback in McDonald's, the white slip-on Vans as seen in Squid Game taking off, or getting really into chess after watching Queen's Gambit. I mean, the rates of chess sales were pretty insane after that from those companies. So key to these behaviors is that they exhibit a higher degree of fandom, but they are difficult to track using traditional metrics. Likes and comments on Facebook may be easier to measure, but they don't provide the necessary well-rounded picture of where audiences may be expressing and exploring their fandom, which is necessary to adeptly fit into their increasingly complex digital lives. So let's look at another facet of this complexity on the next slide. The super serving of digital has enabled niche to become mainstream. You may have heard this from media before. And as a result, local is going global rather than the other way around. At the convergence of too much content and high discovery, that which is unique stands out as appealing. So we're seeing a movement away from the legacy model of one-way distribution from large production studios to majority audiences, to a diversification of production, distribution, discovery, and the fandom feedback loop, which is basically what it's becoming with all these communication tools. So localized content can now more easily see success on a global scale. We've seen this in music with everything from K-pop to Dutch rap to the emergence of Indian hip-hop and the global phenomenon of Latin music. And we've also seen this in TV shows. So for example, Squid Game, Money Heist, and Dark, none of which did well in their domestic markets at first or didn't take off or weren't greenlit, but have seen insane success on a global scale. This is also having an impact on production budgets as well as revenue generation, but this is becoming a problem of the streaming model more broadly rather than content and culture itself. So I will now pass you on to my colleague Tim, who can talk a little bit more about the video aspect of the streaming world. Hello, Tim.
Thank you, Hannah. So I've got 2 minutes to talk about some massive tectonic shifts that are going to take place in video over the coming 12 months. So for my first slide, I'm going to be focusing on golf, which is the media methodology for understanding how direct-to-consumer propositions, so SVOD, subscription video on demand, can shift from being an additive to a substitutive TV experience. So what that means is streaming replacing traditional TV is the main way to engage with TV content. Now, fundamentally, that comes down to adding in these 4 pillars of the traditional pay TV landscape: genres, originals, library, and formats. So right now, we're still in that transition phase from originals as being the main way to find out about new direct-to-consumer propositions. And we're moving into libraries. So with the arrival of the new direct-to-consumer propositions in 2019 onwards, led by the likes of Disney+, HBO Max, Peacock, Paramount+, we're seeing library become really important as part of the offering, the deepness that justifies retention engagement, genres spreading out to include news and sport, crucial aspects of traditional TV, and formats, which is really important for instilling daily active user engagement, the key driver of digital entertainment propositions in 2022 and beyond. Now, I've gone to the next slide. Alongside golf, we've got the next big challenge. It's a long-term secular shift, but it has huge ramifications for the TV industry. And this is the rise of the smart TV to becoming the primary means of delivering TV content in 2022 and beyond. And right now we're in this transition stage where traditional TV moves into smart TV, which is traditional TV, but with the ability to integrate apps, which may or may not be video focused, that allows the creation of a smart home entertainment ecosystem, which also creates the possibility of new ways of regulating how consumers engage with direct-to-consumer propositions and how they are disintermediated from between the audience and the platform owners of these new smart TV ecosystems, but also potentially unlocking the legendary silver streamers that media introduced back in 2021 through older propositions, older technologies such as smart speakers that allow the ability to integrate holistic cross-entertainment smart home entertainment experience with the TV as the focal point. With that, I'm going to hand you over to Karol, our lead games analyst, who's going to give you an overview of games trends in 2022.
Thank you, Tim. Hi, everyone. I've got two trends for you quick in the next 4 minutes. The first one is on the importance of bridging IRL and digital. We are entering a new phase in the evolution of digital consumption. Traditionally, IRL dominated entertainment consumption, but with the advent of the internet, smartphones, and other technological innovations, companies and consumers created these de facto replicas of IRL experiences. And coupled with unequal distribution of technology adoption, the net result is that the current digitally native generations actually have to balance their lives between IRL and digital. However, because the digital environment is a replica to IRL, more or less, those two worlds are in fact competitive at the moment rather than symbiotic. And that intensifies problems with the information overload and saturation of the attention economy that we've covered in the past plenty. And we all know that IRL is going to fight back in 2022. And the challenge will be to innovate digital propositions to complement real-life environments rather than compete against them. And games face a particular risk here as IRL comes back. One, IRL is video games' weakest engagement touchpoint. Two, games have been transitioning towards this in-game spending and engagement-led business models, meaning that any uptick in IRL activities can impact games revenues significantly more than in the unit sales-led era. That's why games companies need to establish more and better engagement touchpoints in IRL as well going forward. Entertainment partners who are traditionally strong in IRL, be it music, sports, cinemas, or even fashion companies, they will play a key role in this. And in many ways for the games industry, I think 2022 will be more about using wider entertainment to build and retain cultural relevance and fandom than about the game's titles themselves. And so to be clear, the prediction here is not that we will see more cross-entertainment experiences and products inside games. That one is for sure. The prediction here is that companies that action the importance of better bridging their digital propositions with IRL will actually see stronger growth in way of fandom and ultimately engagement and monetization than those who didn't. Right. I'd like to move on to the second trend now, which is about the rise of games-related video. And in the last few years, games-related video has really established a solid foothold. So much so that at the moment, 11% of consumers say they watch games-related videos every month. To put that into context, that's about the size of the audience of news fans or reality TV fans or even sports fans. So there is now a growing and a proven sort of use case in way of demand. Thus far, games video was largely a monetization stronghold for YouTube and Twitch, but 2022 could be the year where it not only starts spilling much more into the deliberations of SVOD video services, etc., but more importantly, a year when the games industry itself actually captures a part of that opportunity. 2022 could be the year when games companies actually turn games video from a marketing tool into a fundamental monetization pillar of the games industry itself. And for games developers and publishers in particular, there are two key facets to this. One is about catering to the video consumption needs of gamers, and the other is about catering to the games video creator needs. So the first one is really, and both are really about giving each of these segments, either the viewers or the creators, more reasons to come and join your platform or game. At the moment, obviously, YouTube and Twitch have a long lead, but what are the things that games publishers can kind of do to improve on that experience, improving on what's out there? You know, watching a session on Fortnite can be cool, but why couldn't I be, you know, buying the player's gear in real time? Why couldn't I be bidding on joining the creator in a game session, etc.? So those will be things like improving the spectator modes experience, etc., to cater to the game's needs. Now, catering to the game's creator will be about giving them the reasons not to necessarily watch via you, but to stream via you. And this is, again, about enabling creator tools inside the games, as well as the monetization infrastructure for these creators to have additional reasons to come and join you. Games essentially have an opportunity to insert a more effective interactive layer into the game's video experience itself, on both the creator and the consumer side. And that's certainly a battleground worth playing for in 2022. Happy to follow up on any of these or more trends with any of you. Please do get in touch. But in the meantime, I'm happy to hand the microphone over to my colleague, Chris.
Awesome. Thank you, Karol. It's nice to see everyone in the comments and the chats. Hope you're all doing well. So today I'm here to talk about the music creators and the creator economy. And my first trend is about lean artists. And for those of you who may be familiar with the concept of the lean startup, you'll be right in thinking that this is how artists can build and test and develop minimum viable products, whether that's the songs or recordings or even their own personal brand in the marketplace on all the new platforms that are coming up. And so we're all familiar with the traditional way of artists making and releasing music: write songs, record them, promote them, release them, and even, perform them on tours and everything. And so recorded music for so long has been about the consumption of the end product, the final complete recording. But now all of these new platforms like TikTok and platforms that are emulating TikTok as well are bringing these stages of writing, recording, and promoting all into a single process. So recorded music and songwriting is about the process, not just the product. And we can see this with artists like Pink Pantheress and her meteoric rise, and lots of producers, particularly on TikTok, like Kato on the Track, who's gone viral for having loads of collaborations with different artists through the platform itself. And so music is being used to drive engagement way before it even reaches the stage of the finished product. Audiences are part of the process, they're collaborating, and sometimes those collaborations can go viral within themselves and also end up defining the finished record. And so what this actually means is that we've got a whole swathe of consumers becoming creators themselves. They're taking ownership of the process and creating new ways of building records and building fan bases. And so on my next slide, we're going to talk a lot more about this particular aspect of the process, which is the consumerization of creation. Because if consumers are engaging in creation in this way, then creation is becoming an entertainment proposition within itself. And more people have been making music since the start of the pandemic. And for a lot of them, social media is the entry point where anyone can really participate. However, it's these new developing creator tools which are accelerating the output. They're less technical, they're simple, they're a lot of fun to use as well. And it's these types of tools which should be considered forms of entertainment, particularly when you think artist loop packs, for instance, like Dua Lipa or Mark Ronson on GarageBand. They're simply ways for consumers to engage with the music in a different way, in a more interactive way, in a more creative way. And ultimately, if creation is becoming a part of the wider entertainment landscape, then it's competing in an already highly saturated attention economy. But what is amazing about creation is that it's one of the most active forms of engagement. You can't really do it without, by engaging with any other form of media, unlike you might be watching Netflix and on TikTok on your phone at the same time. So with creation, there's very few things out there that really capture this much attention right now. And so it creates this incentive for other forms of entertainment, particularly things in like gaming and also in the sort of more passive based forms of entertainment, to engage more creative capability, to capture more of that attention. And also, when you have more attention, you can build out more monetization capabilities as well. And so that's what I have for the creator side. And I'm going to pass you on to my wonderful colleague Tati to talk about her trends for this year.
Thanks so much, Chris. Hi, everyone. I'm going to be focusing on one of my favorite topics, which is social media's evolving impact on music. And there are two sort of interlocking trends to discuss here. So the first trend has to do with this evolving concept of virality. The idea of going viral has had an enormous impact on the music landscape, driven especially by TikTok, which, as everybody watching has probably witnessed, has catapulted dozens, if not hundreds of songs and artists to hit status over 2020 and 2021. So we're at the point where there's an entire industry based on reverse engineering viral moments for musicians by partnering with influencers to promote songs. But a couple things have changed, particularly over the past year. First of all, TikTok now has over 1 billion users and is starting to get competition from companies like Instagram, which launched Reels, and YouTube, which launched its own competitor Shorts. Every artist on earth is seemingly using short form video as promotion. And all of this is creating a very oversaturated social media landscape where it's harder and harder for any one song or one artist to break through. At the same time as that, fandom is fragmenting. So as Hannah put it, niches going mainstream, creating a greater diversity of hits. We're no longer in a world where masses are exposed to the same content. Instead, people are exposed to entertainment niches. And again, niche is the new mainstream. So what does this all mean? As a result of all of these trends, the meaning and impact of viral itself is changing. So we predict that there will be fewer big viral moments for everyone and more smaller viral moments for individuals and subcommunities. So if you take a look at this next slide, you'll see in the old model, there would be maybe one star influencer creating a dance challenge, say, and then her dozens of followers would do the same thing. Their dozens of followers would pick it up, and eventually you'd feel like this one song is overtaking the entire platform. Now, that definitely still happens. We're not saying it doesn't, but it's more often happening, that same process, in smaller overlapping subcultures. So if you're on TikTok, you know that there's hundreds of these, from book talk to fashion talk to witch talk, and everything in between. So the same process is happening just within these subcultures. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Nobody in the music industry should panic. Niche audiences tend to be more engaged than mainstream ones. So this is maybe actually better, since while a viral moment may reach fewer people, those people are more likely to engage with it. So artists might even take this as a cue to start targeting micro influencers and micro communities instead of trying to reach everyone. So that's the first trend. The second trend that I want to talk about is this idea of sound on social media. So short form video is making music more relevant to our daily lives than ever. Every social media platform is starting to resemble TikTok, and on these platforms, audio is arguably more important than it has been to any social media format before. That's because audio provides the foundation for the joke or whatever it is that the user is posting, whether that's an audio meme with a clip from a TV show, or it's a dance challenge set to a song clip, or anything else. The fact that memes are becoming audio-based alone is a fascinating shift that I could go on about. But as short form continues to grow, users will increasingly only be able to understand social media posts with the sound on, which obviously opens up many new pathways for music. It also means that TikTok campaigns are increasingly measured in their own right, rather than simply the potential streaming halo effect. So those are our predictions for social media's impact on music in 2022 and beyond. And now I'm going to hand you over to Srishti to talk about sports.
Thank you so much, Tati. And last year we began to see a lot of initiatives in sports that have been catering to global audiences. Some of them worked. NBA has been growing its audience. Formula One has been creating new fans with the popularity of Drive to Survive. Some failed, like the European Super League, and the importance of global fandom has been increasing more than ever. Hannah mentioned that local has been going global, and in sports, cross entertainment is going to play a really important part this year. And this is also because fandoms are different in different markets. And so the role of the player or the athlete is now very different from a club and is very different from a league. And new fans are more interested in a lot of different things, a lot of things that happen behind the scenes. They want to be able to relate to sports stars and athletes. And there have been some really interesting trends around how athletes have been diving into different forms of entertainment, starting off with Lando Norris, who's also a Formula One driver. He has his own esports outfit, and we found a lot of overlaps between Formula One and gaming. And this is a new way for gaming fans to enter the world of Formula One, and also for Formula One fans to find some fan bases in the gaming world. KSI is another really great example from the last few years, where he started out as a YouTuber. He used to comment on people playing FIFA online. And after that, he's also now one of the very popular boxers. He's amateur, but he drives almost as much sales as pro boxers do. And he's also a very successful musician. Even in India, we have Samay Raina, who's a comedian. He's really passionate about chess, has used the popularity of Queen's Gambit, and has organized chess tournaments with Magnus Carlsen and Vishwanathan Anand, and has raised a lot of money for charity over the last year due to COVID. And I think these three examples are just a few of the opportunities. There have been a lot of football stars who've gone on TikTok, created a lot of content, especially when live sports had taken a backseat due to the pandemic. And this is what has kept fans engaged. It's helped fans engage with artists much more. And this has been true all over the world. And, on the next slide, we're going to see how, because sports is turning into an entertainment format, it's no longer a nice to have, it's a need to have. Just this week, New York Times acquired The Athletic, which actually goes to show that sports is becoming a big part of the entertainment proposition. And a lot of strategies, a lot of ways in which sports are reaching out to new audiences is through social media, through athletes, through what they're doing. Everyone's looking at what Cristiano Ronaldo is doing, trying to be Cristiano Ronaldo. And sports which have struggled to reach international audiences. NFL is trying to break itself into the German market. Slowly, they're going to take over new markets, especially emerging markets like India, the Middle East, Africa. This is the market that's going to be looked into very heavily. NBA has recently started its own league that it supports in Africa, and there are going to be a lot of new initiatives that sort of drive new fandoms and create new opportunities and touch points for fans across different parts of the world. And more importantly, till about 2 years ago, sports broadcast was giving access to people who couldn't travel to watch different sporting tournaments. But today, as younger audiences, digital first audiences come on to enjoy or watch, engage with sports, the dynamic is going to move from just accessing sport to how people actually want to control the way that they consume sports. So bringing in fantasy sports, betting, community chats, and a lot of other different forms of entertainment onto streaming services is going to be key for the future of sports broadcast. Thank you. And handing it back to Mark.
Okay, thank you, Shrishti. So hopefully there everybody's been able to get a super quick, super condensed, super intense view of some of what we think are going to shape entertainment across the board. Hopefully you've seen not only that there are trends here which are really specific to the individual industries, but that that translate across multiple ones. And things like the attention economy, the year of the creator. These are dynamics which everything gets affected, and I think we've said this before and we'll say it again, and again and again, is what has changed about the entertainment world in the last 3+ years is everything has become more interdependent, more interconnected, and more intercompetitive as well. So I think that's, hopefully that's one thing you take away from this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask a couple of questions, a couple of the team members, and then move on to some of the questions that came out of the the Q&A across the various different platforms. So thank you everybody for firing in your questions. The team's busy harvesting all of those, so you've still got time to throw more in if you want to. But I'm going to start off with this question. Can SVOD, so SVOD is subscription video on demand, that's like some Netflix, etc. Can they still meaningfully operate as standalone propositions if the smart TV itself becomes a TV distribution platform? So Tim, I think that is one for you.
It certainly is. Thanks, Mark. So the equivocal answer is yes and no. The reality is it can, but because the smart TV is going to effectively become the gatekeeper that effectively regulates how TV audiences engage with the DTC services, which are the next generation network for distributing TV content in a smart TV ecosystem, their ability to operate outside of that is going to be reduced inevitably, because the smart TV is operating as a Trojan horse of using a traditional non-digital technology, which suddenly opens up to allow app-based behavior. So SVOD surviving outside of that ecosystem is predominantly going to be niche, and to Tatiana's point, it's going to be about serving micro communities where fandom is operating alongside the mainstream propositions that are finding their home in this new smart TV ecosystem.
Let's go. Thank you, Tim. So let's go for another question. I think this is one that here's what's the most important thing to keep in mind when how to design strategies to bridge IRL and digital. Okay, we've had a couple of questions, well, a few questions in the comment stream. Just what is IRL? Isn't it ridiculous? We're here, the pandemic and digital have going to conspire to make real life a channel of its own. But it genuinely is getting into that sort of context where, with more of the digital entertainment time disappearing as people go back into the real world, suddenly all of these sort of like, quote unquote offline activations have become crucially important, where the online world wants to get into the real world. So I'm going to bring in two of my colleagues here to go and jump into this. Going to bring in Hannah and Karol, who can talk about bridging IRL and digital. Over to you two.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, Mark. I just have like two quick points, I guess, on this. I think there are two really important things that companies need to keep in mind when bridging IRL, the in real life, and the digital proposition. It needs to serve, whatever you do in that field must serve two things. One is, particularly if you're a games company, prevent from sort of potential engagement and brand visibility losses as the in real life propositions fight back in 2022. And second, perhaps even more important, it's about helping consumers declutter digitally. It's about helping them fight the attention overload by inserting your brand into what they do, rather than just asking them to spend time with your entertainment proposition. So kind of, as Hannah said, before, and as Mark said, it's a lot about giving consumers the reasons rather than ways to engage. I know we had one question asking, actually it's an excellent question to ask, would a live music concert that is streamed count as IRL or digital? The key thing here is that, you could look at it probably both ways and make an argument for both. The truth is, though, that a live stream concert, if it's really just a live stream concert put on a video, it kind of supports the problem that we've talked about at the beginning, which is essentially that people are creating replicas of IRL experiences and putting them onto digital. That does not yet mean that you are ticking the box in way of bridging. What really needs to happen is think about how you can put something into digital that actually allows consumer to experience something that they haven't been able to experience in the IRL environment. So a good example would be, for example, the Ariana Grande gig in Fortnite. Things have happened there that just wouldn't have been possible either in the live environment or in a typical streamed concert. right? So, and that's the kind of thing is what can we do to make it more useful and a bit more pleasant for the consumers? But sorry, Hannah, go ahead. I'm sure you've got a lot more to add there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's almost an excellent question just because it is, you know, the confusion between what is IRL versus what is digital. We live in a world where, like, over the past 20 years, we've gone from things being online being quite a novelty and new propositions being developed and these being two very parallel worlds. And IRL creators are trying to create new digital things to sort of replicate that, to almost, maybe bridging is the wrong word for it. It's more overlaps. I think I'd argue that a lot of Gen Z consumers don't see there being a huge difference between the digital world and the in real life world because they're constantly connected on both of them. And so when you're trying to recreate real life in a digital environment, you're just creating more competition. But if you're creating propositions that are allowing for overlays or making things easier, or basically just recognizing that these two worlds are now combined in our daily lives, you're seeing a lot more uptake, and it's much more natural for digital natives, I think.
I mean, it is a huge topic, and we should probably say before we hand it over back to Mark that we actually, Hannah and I and a couple of other team members, we've actually did a podcast on this very topic. So if you want to, you know, sort of dive deeper into the whole IRL concept, which is a big topic, admittedly, and fairly complex, have a look at our latest podcast that I think is out already, Hannah, right?
The first episode is out, and I believe the second episode is coming out today or tomorrow. So do have a look. It's on Spotify and Acast. Little plug there. Yes. But yeah, definitely check it out. We deep dive into a lot of the topics we've discussed on the webinar.
Perfect. Great. Thank you, Karol. Thank you, Hannah. So there've been a lot of questions coming in around some of the creator focused side of what we've been talking about. So I'd like to bring in Tati and Chris here, and we're going to talk about, really good question is, what will the year the creator actually mean for creators themselves? You know, and I think, you know, a subtext to this is so much of what is driving the creator economy are the platforms who fundamentally harvest creator activity rather than necessarily being too focused on the sustainable careers and mental well-being of the creators themselves. So Tati and Chris, I'm sure you've got a lot to say on this. Over to you two.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Mark. I think that, first of all, it's just a wonderful time to be alive as a creator, in the sense of you've never had more opportunity to actually create. I think for a lot of people in the past, they've had such a strong creative instinct within them and may not have had the opportunity to put themselves into the recorded music format and to be able to release their music and to share it with the world. That's all changed. The state of tools now is just incredible. It's affordable, it's accessible, and like I said before, it's fun. There's a lot of amazing stuff out there. But as you said, Mark, the challenge is with the platforms, because as creation becomes democratized, so does the competition becomes so much more intense. There's a lot more people who want to be creators and want that to be their main living, and some that may feel that they have like a right or entitlement to be able to take that opportunity. And the reality is, with streaming in particular, there is only a finite royalty pot, and that can only go to so many people. And so, of course, there's going to be a lot of people that are just not going to make their living from the traditional methods of the music industry. But that's also why we're seeing all of these new ancillary ways of monetizing careers and monetizing creators emerge to meet this, almost like this demand to be paid and not a lot of supply.
Totally. Totally agree. And something that I've written about recently, which relates to this, is kind of this need, amid everything that Chris just talked about, to make the creator economy more sustainable for its creators. Because right now it feels like to be successful as a creator, you need to be churning out content 24/7. And that's not really possible for most people. Burnout is real. And it also takes the creator away a lot of times from the very thing that they're supposed to be focused on. Like if you're an artist and you're constantly posting on TikTok, or you're constantly trying to, you know, put stuff on your Patreon or whatever it is, you're not actually making music or working on music that often. So there's a lot of issues with this. I think it also creates sort of perverse incentives for content being released, because people aren't just publishing things or releasing things that they think are great. They're releasing them because they need to stay on this treadmill. So I think that there's a lot of need to think about ways to make the creator economy more sustainable. And I think that's a very like open question right now and something that everybody needs to be thinking about. But one thought I've had in terms of like a potential way forward is focusing, instead of building audiences, on building communities where fans are interacting with each other instead of just with the artist. Because that way you're kind of creating this self-sustaining group that has something to do when you're not releasing content. So it kind of takes the onus off the creator to be churning things out all the time.
Great. Yep. Great answers. So before, I'm going to go over to a sports question for Srishti in a moment. But first, I think we can squeeze in a couple more of the questions that fit into this creator conversation. So first of all, this idea about remuneration and recognition. A simplified way of thinking about the old music business was artists seeking fame and fortune. And, maybe now it is more about remuneration and recognition. In some ways, fame and fortune are becoming decoupled. You can be really famous and really successful and still not generate that much income from it. And, there seem to be a few things which are sort of both running in parallel and also seem to compete or have tensions with them. So, between culture and content, it's churning out so much content ultimately going to compromise culture and creativity. The whole of the digital environment is focused on binge culture. So binge culture means that we have to churn out more content. And so you can go from consumers wanting to binge, resulting in creative burnout because they're trying to keep up. So I'm just sort of interested, Chris or Tati, if you've got any thoughts about those sort of tensions between keeping up with the demand that exists in this permanently persistent on-demand world versus the actual art of making music itself.
Yeah, I think one solution to that is that your craft is the content. And I think a lot of creators that are finding success are turning their whole creative process into Twitch streams. They're live streaming the way they make music. They're inviting their audience to sort of participate in that, contribute to it. And, there's also sort of educate what you might learn from your own process. That's another big thing to do as well. We've also seen some stuff in the comments about Web3, which is definitely, it's an emerging area which has a lot of potential and a lot of room to grow. The only thing I would say about it is that what we're seeing in the creator space is it's being facilitated by accessibility and people having access to tools, access to making music, access to releasing and promoting it that they wouldn't have had before. And Web3 is still in that stage where it's just not nearly as accessible for the majority of new creators, which, you think that a lot of artists might be coming from Nigeria or coming from India or South Africa or the Middle East. There may not be as much sort of demand to engage with Web3 as much as there is from promoting, just making music in a more sort of traditional way.
Yeah. No, great comment. So, Tati, any final thoughts before we move on to a question for Srishti?
Yeah, no, I think everything Chris said, I don't want to just repeat everything, but yeah, I think there's the oversaturation is still a challenge that hasn't really been solved. And I think everything kind of goes back to, I feel like I always sound like a broken record with this, but the whole niche over mainstream thing, I mean, it's really like finding that engaged, smaller community in a lot of ways is going to give you more success than trying to go for everyone. So I think it all kind of comes back to that.
Yeah, and I think there's just one final build on that. If you think about what streaming does, it's really similar to what radio did or still does. And that is, it's about creating a really big audience. But the thing is, it's really big audience with relatively low amount of return on each audience member. So if you're really big, it works. It's a scale business. But if you are smaller, so mid-tail, long-tail, then actually you don't really want big, large-scale audience that gives you nice big vanity metrics. What you want is a small-scale fan base who loves what you do and really wants to engage with you and will pay you for things that they value for. So I think that is, when we think about this, tying together the slicing of the funnel, you're the creator, etc. It's maybe what we're going to see. This is the artists and creators more broadly looking at places which can drive them revenue that on an industry scale is pretty small, but for them is enough to have a living wage, which, you know, most of the scale platforms just are not doing at the moment. So great, thanks Tati and Chris. And sort of final question thing that we're going to squeeze in is one for Shrishti, which has come in, which is asking about the degree to which NFL is going to be able to, you know, try to succeed in breaking into new markets. You know, is it going to be able to see its fan bases and community be as big as soccer, for example? You know, where you are in India, Shrishti, you know, the English Premier League has been hugely successful in exporting. Formula One is a global, you know, phenomenon outside of maybe the US. But, you know, can NFL essentially do what the Premier League in soccer has done?
I think
Soccer, but anyway, there we
go. Football. I think there are a couple of things that the NFL is going to need to do, and some of these some of these sports, football, Formula One, cricket, that's in very specific markets, but is slowly adding one or two countries every time there's a World Cup. And that important thing is grassroots level development. NBA, for example, is growing really fast in India right now, but it's 15 years of grassroots level work that they've actually put in to have that happen today. Same as with football, there's constantly a lot of work that's been going into developing football. NBA has recently done this whole league in Africa, and that sort of developing these grassroots level players and also like creating leagues. And that's how a sport that has traditionally been quite stuck to one market has grown outside, has made its space in other markets. So these are definitely two things that the NFL is going to need to do. I know that people in India, there's a very small fan base for the people who watch NFL, which is probably through international travel. Someone lives in the US, but from a playing perspective, I think it's a very, very, very small sport. I've never seen a football turf anywhere around Mumbai or Delhi. So that's definitely one of the things. Third thing is having a culture around it, around the sport itself. NBA is most beautifully integrated with that hip hop culture. Formula One had this Rolex watch wearers culture, which didn't fit. They had to change that culture, and they've slowly started to build this gaming culture. I just read recently that an esports driver is actually now going to be a Formula 2 driver. So there's that entire culture of gaming that's being associated with the sport. And similarly, NFL is going to have to find that culture as well. And it's not something that's going to happen next year or this year. It's, NBA took 15 years, football took even more, to the extent where local football is still not as successful as the Premier League, and football is still a smaller market, a smaller sport in India compared to, say, cricket or kabaddi. So yeah, it's going to take some time, but if NFL puts in work into these three areas, I think it's definitely possible.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Shrishti. So we're nearly up against the hour, so we're going to finish it there. But there's one final question which I want to get to, which is this: there's a question about the degree to which the tension between content and culture and music and and calling things content. So I go back to this quote from a very old school guy, but Andrew Lloyd Webber, and I think it's you can hear how indignant he is with this quote. But I think it's a brilliant one that sort of encapsulates what has happened to music and video and various other forms of entertainment media in digital environments. And it's this: it's the fine wines of France are not merely content for the glass manufacturing industry. We have got to a stage where music, video games, the works is something that is just fueling the pipes of platforms. So the question on the screen, which I suppose we can just tie in with this as well, is the promise of the creative economy being everyday people making a sustainable living from it. Clearly, the vast majority of people are not going to make a living from it. Clearly, the vast majority of the long tail is always going to remain long tail. The difference is you can find your audience. Your audience might be 12 people, but in the old world, maybe only one of those people was in your local town. Now, if those 12 people are spread across the world, you can find them. You might find your 12 people, as long as there's a realistic level setting of expectations. Then the creative economy can reach its potential. But we do end up with that final tension about culture and content, being up against each other. Anyway, that's sort of more challenge and opportunity. But hopefully, there's been enough here to keep you at least thinking a few things in a slightly different perspective than you did before. Really appreciate you having tuned in across all the various different platforms. Hope you found it interesting. There's going to be a recording of this. There's going to be slides available. So thanks, everyone. And go check out the podcast and sign up to the newsletter if you haven't already. And stay tuned for the next webinar. Over to you, Sion.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We really appreciate it as well. As Mark said, the podcast is now out as well, so make sure to go and check that out. And if you're wanting to see the 2020 media predictions report as well, it's out on our website as well. Make sure to visit that. Thank you again, everyone, for joining so much, and we will end it there.